Hey fishing fanatics, welcome back to Fish Den 365. I got a comment recently from Brandon wanting to know how I target stripers. He'd like me to do a video on specifically how I target stripers and striped bass hybrids. So I like to fish for stripers during the cold water period of fall and winter, and then again in spring. I don't target stripers in summer, usually because I'm fishing for bass then, preparing for tournaments, that kind of thing. However, if I'm fishing out there early morning or late evening and a school of stripers comes up busting on bait, you can bet I'm going to get over there and be ready to throw a topwater lure or a swim bait or something to catch those fish. But generally, I fish for stripers in spring, fall, and winter. In those cold water months, I actually have a couple of videos that you can watch. I have two videos, Phenomenal Late Fall Fishing Parts 1 and 2. Are good videos to watch for my approach to striper fishing in the cold water periods. Especially part 2, I go into detail about how I look for fish, what I use to catch them, and the retrieves that I use to catch them. So you can take a look at those videos. Today, though, I want to talk about a specific method that I use for catching stripers in the spring. And it's the best and easiest way that I know of to locate stripers. It's almost foolproof for locating them. You still have to catch them, but it all starts with locating them and making sure that they're there in the first place. And this has to do with night fishing. And I believe that there's probably going to be a few people out there that get a little angry at me giving this information away in this video, but you still have to put the work in yourself. I'm going to share with you everything that I know about how to target stripers at night in spring. And this information is going to help you catch striped bass, no question about it. You still have to put the work in to do the actual catching, but this information is going to be very valuable. So if you want to catch striped bass and you don't mind fishing at night, then this video is for you. I started night fishing for stripers in the early 90s, probably around 1990 or 91. And at that time, I was not married, did not have any kids. I got married in 95, and I had a son in 98 and a daughter in 2000. So by the early 2000s, I actually stopped night fishing. And it was because I was spending so many hours at night, it was difficult to get up in the mornings the next day. And I didn't want to miss my son and my daughter playing basketball, baseball, cheerleading, gymnastics, and those kind of things. So I gave up night fishing for a while. Now, my son's in college, my daughter's a senior in high school. In the last few years, I've been doing it a little bit some more. I'll talk a little bit more about the dangers of night fishing a little later. I live in eastern Pennsylvania, and we're talking about freshwater stripers in this video. So there are a number of lakes that have alewives and gizzard shad in them, mostly alewives, and they're all not too far from where I live, and they're all stocked with stripers and hybrid stripers. So those of us who live in eastern PA are blessed with having opportunities to fish for these great fish. So some of these lakes are Lake Nockamixon, Blue Marsh, Beltsville Lake, Lake Wallenpaupack, if you're willing to travel a little bit, Raystown Lake, Hammond Lake, there's others I'm sure, but all these lakes have stripers in them, and they're all there basically to control the bait fish, which are alewives and in some cases also gizzard shad. Nockamixon has a great population of alewives. It also has gizzard shad, which actually get larger than alewives, and the stripers key in on both. So what happens is in the springtime, in May and June primarily, the alewives begin spawning. They spawn first. Usually they start in early May when that water begins warming up through the 60s. And it's a nighttime ritual. These alewives will come up to the surface in pairs, or maybe even more than 2 or 3, and they'll actually do like a full circle on the surface. If you ever fished at night and you were out there, you'd notice this. As soon as it gets dark, about an hour after dark, this begins. And so they are vulnerable to predation from stripers and hybrid stripers. And this is how it's easy to find them, because all you have to do is listen and you'll know where the stripers are. So what I usually do is I will pick out an area on the lake. I usually like to go from mid-lake down to the dam. It doesn't mean that the stripers won't be above that area. I've just found through my own experience that mid-lake all the way down to the dam area is the best areas for stripers in most of our lakes. And you just basically find a point A long or an extended point is usually good, and the alewives will go on those points and spawn. And this is what attracts the stripers to them, and before you know it, you'll hear some of these stripers coming up and busting these alewives. And my best description for the sound that makes goes something like this. Doosh! Almost sounds like someone drops a bowling ball in the water in some cases. It's really that loud. Sometimes you can hear this from across the lake. I'm talking a mile away. It's crazy, especially the hybrids. They seem to hit the hardest and make the loudest noise when they attack these alewives. And so this can get a person like me quite excited because I love topwater fishing, and they're up on the surface. It's visual. Even though it's dark out, you can kind of see what's going on. You can sure hear what's going on. And so you'll have this happening with the alewives in May, and the alewives will continue to spawn right through June. And somewhere in late May, more like early June, if you have a system that has gizzard shad on it, they begin spawning too. They're usually closer to the shore. They act a little bit differently. I usually focus in on the alewives, but sometimes the fish will be after the gizzard shad too. But both the baits that we're going to show you here imitate both, so it really doesn't make much of a difference. The stripers are in shallow, they're up and they're eating, and so these are the type of lures that I like to throw. So now once you find these stripers, it doesn't necessarily mean they're easy to catch. And what I've found is the earlier in the year you go, the more vulnerable they are to the lures that I'm going to show you here in a few minutes. And I think it's because they haven't fully keyed in on this circling behavior that the alewives do during their spawning ritual. So you can go out there, say, in early May, and even though a lot of alewives aren't spawning yet, they're just getting started, there might only be a few here and there, you can still catch stripers. They're going to be underneath them, and these lures tend to work really good then. After this spawn has gone on for a few weeks, after these alewives have been doing this for a few weeks, it seems like the stripers really begin to just key in on that circling behavior and almost don't hit anything else. Every now and then you can get them to bite one of these lures, but they key in so specifically on that behavior that you almost have to imitate that behavior somehow with your lures in order to catch them. And they get a little harder to catch. It's still just as exciting because you're throwing your lure out there and there's fish blowing up, all over the place, off and on. And so any particular cast can get the fish of a lifetime basically with these stripers because they're big fish. So I base my lure selection on the size of the bait, the size of the alewives. And in some systems, the alewives grow bigger than others, and that has to do with how fertile the water is. So in the southeastern portion of Pennsylvania, they generally grow bigger. And so if you have alewives that are 5 inches or so, these two lures are very difficult to beat, both for purebred stripers and hybrids. These are a Cordell redfin, and in my opinion, it's the best nighttime topwater lure ever made for stripers. I always have one of these tied on. I've caught more stripers on this bait than any other bait that I throw. You can see I like this color here, Smoky Joe, and black chrome. Blue and chrome work well too. I like to put these decals on them, these reflective finished decals. Sometimes that'll reflect the light a little bit, and I think it just adds to the bait fish profile. It looks a little more like those alewives, and so I like to do that. It could be just a confidence thing, but these things do catch them. And the way you retrieve this, you just throw it out there, you let the ripples settle, and then you just retrieve it very, very slowly. It's almost as slow as you can go. You want the bait to stay on the surface and make a wake. And these red fins make a great wake, and you'll see that tail wagging on the surface. It's like an injured bait fish, and the stripers, they're very vulnerable to that presentation, especially early on. Another bait that I like to use when the alewives are smaller, and by the way, when you're fishing these lures for these stripers, you're going to snag alewives on them. The alewives try to spawn with your lures, and so you'll get to see pretty quickly how big the alewives are, and then that'll help you clue in to get the lures. So when the alewives are smaller, I like this Cordell Rippling redfin. And as you can see, this bait normally comes with 3 hooks. I take the middle hook off because I want the bait to be on the surface. I want to have that same retrieve that the redfin has. This one will tend to go under the water. By taking that hook off, the bait is a little bit lighter in weight, and therefore I can wake this bait the same way I wake the regular redfin. Other thing is I don't like rattles in my baits when I'm fishing for stripers, so on this one there's no rattle. What I did is I just drilled a hole in the back, pulled the rattles out, and then glued over it and painted it. So I like my lures to be silent. Most of the redfins are silent. Some do have rattles. I would recommend getting the ones without rattles. Here's another redfin. This is good to use when the stripers are keying in on bigger gizzard shad. This is a good gizzard shad size profile here. Same color. I like that black and chrome with the reflective tape on it. Killer lure here. Another very good lure to throw for stripers, especially purebreds, is a lure that's difficult to get these days. It's called a Cordell blue striper. It has a very strange action to it where it has this rolling action, but it also has a very wide, almost like a wake bait, but it has this real nice shad profile. I've caught quite a few on this lure. Some guys like to throw topwater lures with spinners, something like this. A lot of guys throw wood choppers. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in that bait, but there are some guys that I know that throw it constantly and they do pretty well with it. I would imagine, I haven't thrown this. This is a whopper plopper, but I would imagine ripping this and stopping it could sound like those alewives and probably would catch some fish. Poppers like this guy are another very good selection. This one I can make actually turn almost as though those alewives, almost like the alewives do. And so this is a good selection also. The Lucky Craft Sammy is a good bait. Imitate these alewives. Also, like a Zara Spook works well for these fish also. For those of you who've watched my videos, you know that I really like this lure. This is a Norman Top Dollar for the systems like Wall and Paw Pack that have the smaller sized alewives in them. It's tough to beat this one. It's the profile of the alewife. It almost looks exactly like them. Now, the other thing that over the years, I spent a lot of hours fishing for stripers at night. And you should be aware that some nights are better than others. If you have a new moon, a dark night with a new moon, that is the absolute best time to go. I have found that they're much more likely to be on the surface and very active on those new moon nights. Full moon is just the opposite. It doesn't mean the stripers aren't there, and it doesn't mean they're not feeding, but they're usually very light shy and they won't be on the surface nearly as much. Very rare to have a full bright moon over the water and those stripers being real active. When that happens, though, you can catch them under the water. And I have two baits here that I like to use. This is a Bomber Long A. I like this. This has the reflective finish right inside the lure. And I also have, if they're a little bit deeper down, if I want to go a little deeper, this is a suspending Bomber Long A. I really like the Bomber Long A for the stripers. I don't fish it in the typical jerkbait fashion that you would for bass at night. Rather, I just throw this lure out and retrieve it just steadily. Just a steady retrieve, let those fish hone in on it and grab it. And so these lures are better to use on nights that are windy and brighter nights. Now, if that full moon is up and it's on the horizon or behind the tree line, you're fine. It's only when that moon is up and high over the water. That's the brighter it is, the shyer the stripers generally are. And another thing is when you're fishing for these fish, it's better to not have much light on your boat, or if you're fishing from shore, don't have lights turned on. I've done many hours on the shore, and the stripers would be biting, and some guy would come down with a lantern, place his lantern on the bank, and everything would just shut down, and everything would move 100 yards down the bank. So the stripers are extremely light shy, and you want to avoid having bright lights so that you don't scare them away. We also have the Delaware River, and stripers like to come up the river in spring. And they'll stay in the river, some of them, all summer long. And at night, they become vulnerable. One of the good lures to throw at night is a plastic eel imitation. I also like the Rebel jointed minnow like this. I've caught plenty of stripers in the river on a jointed minnow, just throwing it out there and retrieving it back very slowly. And when you get one on, you'll know it. It'll rip your arm right off. Or at least that's how it feels sometimes. So we've covered what to look for. You're focusing on points primarily. By the way, it's not just stripers that are active on these alewives, as you might guess. Everything's up and eating them. So along with the stripers, you're catching smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, giant channel catfish, walleyes. Everything that is a predator type of fish, they'll be up and eating these alewives too. And what I've noticed is usually some points are better for like channel cats and other points are better for stripers. The channel cats usually like very long, flat, tapering points, and the stripers they like tapering points, but something that has a little bit more depth change to it. So remember that when you're looking for a point to fish. And again, remember, mid-lake down to the dam is usually the best area to focus in on. So what time should you be out on the water doing this? Well, anywhere from dark 10 o'clock to 4 in the morning is usually the window where these fish are active on the bait. A little more specifically, usually from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. is when most of the activity takes place on most nights. Sometimes it can go a little later than that, but you'll know it. You'll be out there and you'll be hearing the activity and the stripers feeding, and then eventually it starts to quiet down. It doesn't mean they're not still around. Sometimes I think the stripers are just laying out there with full bellies, and sometimes you can still tempt a few. But usually from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. is usually the prime time to be out there. But if you're out there from 10 p.m. to 4, you've covered the entire window for when this bite usually takes place. I have to mention a little bit about the dangers of fishing for stripers at night. This might sound a little funny what I'm about to say, and I suppose it is, but it's also true. And that is, if your body's not used to staying up those hours at night, it can kind of mess you up. Number one, if you're not used to this kind of activity with these fish blowing up on top, it can be extremely addictive, and it pulls you in because you always want to catch more. And sometimes, even though they're up and popping and busting bait, it doesn't mean you're going to catch a whole lot of fish. So you're out there throwing, and then immediately the next night you want to do it again. And so sometimes you can find yourself doing this 2, 3, 4, 5 nights in a row, and the next thing you know, it really kind of messes up your internal clock because you're used to sleeping at that time at night. So just be aware of that. It can kind of mess you up that way. I know some guys that actually, I believe, got addicted to fishing like this. A couple of them that I know actually ended up getting divorced because I think their wives got tired of them never being home at night. It's funny, but not. The other thing about it is when you're coming home after this trip, after you've been out all night, you have to be very careful driving because you might find yourself rather tired. One of the tricks that I use to keep me awake is I always had something to eat while I was driving on the way home, and the act of eating and having some sugar entering my body usually kept me awake for the drive. So there's a little tip in case you feel tired. But you might find that if you push it real hard, you might hallucinate a little bit. Some strange things happen out there when you're driving home after a real late night fishing, believe me. And for those who've done it, they could tell you. There are some times where you might hallucinate on the road. So be careful driving on the way home. And also be careful you don't want to get yourself into some type of sleep disorder because a couple of nights you're out there fishing and then you're trying to sleep normally for the next few nights, that kind of thing. So just plan accordingly. What you could do is just do it once every 4 or 5 days or once every week, something like that. You'll still have plenty of opportunity because this bite lasts for a couple months and you won't be taxing your body too hard. Well, I think I gave you quite a bit to digest there. But if you take this information that I've given you and you try it this coming spring, we're in February now, so we still have to wait. But if you try these techniques and these lures and fish the way I've just described, you're going to put yourself in prime position to catch stripers and hybrid stripers. It's just the easiest way I know to locate them, and it's a pretty good way to catch them too. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up, hit the like button. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe, share this with your friends, continue sending me the comments, let me know what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, what you might like to see next, and we'll continue bringing these videos to you. May God bless your fishing endeavors.